The GPUs inside these two products have basically the same name, RTX 3070. One is destined for desktop PCs, the other is obviously a gaming laptop, but they don't even get close to delivering the same performance. So what's going on here? Is this a problem? Let's get benchmarking. Welcome back to Hardware Unboxed. Today we are checking out NVIDIA's new GeForce RTX 3070 laptop GPU, a product that did launch a little while back, but we haven't managed to get in our hands until recently. You may have watched our coverage of the RTX 3060 laptop GPU several weeks ago. Well, as expected, this is the faster and more expensive brother that laptop OEMs are already integrating into premium gaming laptops. Specification-wise, the RTX 3070 laptop GPU is an interesting product in that it doesn't use the same core configuration as its desktop counterpart. While both use GA104 silicon, the desktop GPU features 5888 CUDA cores compared to just 5120 on the laptop GPU, indicating a more cut-down design. Rated boost clock speeds are also more than 100 MHz lower for the laptop variant in the best cases, although the memory configuration that includes 8GB of GDDR6 remains the same. Ultimately, to take a 220-watt desktop GPU and shove it down into 80 to 125 watts, some things do need to be sacrificed, and for this generation it's both the GPU core configuration and clock speeds. Speaking of power, like the last few generations, the RTX 3070 laptop GPU is available in a range of power options that OEMs can use depending on the cooling solution they have available in their laptop. The minimum TGP is 80 watts, previously called Max-Q but no longer since NVIDIA canned that naming convention, while the maximum is 125 watts, and there are lots of options in between. Additional power can be sent to the GPU through Dynamic Boost 2.0 as well, so most RTX 30 laptop GPUs have a power range they operate within. This naming system does make it a bit confusing for laptop buyers, as the 80 watt and 125 watt variants will produce different levels of performance, although in the last few weeks NVIDIA has mandated that OEMs display the GPU's TGP on the spec sheets for their laptops, an improvement on the terrible naming situation we had previously. Today I'm benchmarking two laptops that use the RTX 3070 laptop GPU, one with a base power rating of 80 watts and another with 115 watts, giving us a good look at the range of possible performance you can get out of this GPU. Dynamic Boost 2.0 provides up to an additional 15 watts of power in both systems when CPU utilization is light, so the TGP ranges are 80 to 95 watts in the lower power model and 115 to 130 watts in the higher power model, although typical power usage falls in the middle of that range while gaming. The RTX 3070 115 to 130 watt laptop we have in for testing is the XMG Apex 17, an upcoming laptop that you will have seen on the channel previously in our Ryzen 9 5900HX review. So inside is of course that Ryzen APU plus 16GB of dual channel DDR4 3200 memory and the RTX 2070 with dynamic boost and resizable bar. Our 80 to 95 watt configuration is found inside the Gigabyte Aorus 15G, a slimmer and more premium system. The Aorus 15G is also capable of running the RTX 3070 at 90 to 105 watts, but to avoid making this video an hour long, I'm just sticking to the base default configuration for now. But buyers should note that the Aorus 15G is a little faster when you set a higher mode in Gigabyte software utility. I'm a big fan of the build quality of this laptop. The finish has a really nice texture to it and the keyboard is great. While it is portable, it's not the slimmest chassis, so I would have liked to see a higher power level for the GPU ideally. It also uses just an Intel Core i7-10870H instead of AMD's newer and faster Ryzen 5000 APUs, although this could be due to availability. Intel's 10th gen CPUs are shipping now, but Ryzen 5000 is in a stock shortage. In today's video, I'll also be comparing these laptop variants to a typical desktop gaming system with the GeForce RTX 3070 inside, the desktop variant of course. My test system is kitted out with a mid-range Core i5-10600K processor, which actually has two fewer CPU cores than the laptops we're testing today that are all 8-core designs, although of course the desktop CPU can clock higher and use more power. There's also 16GB of DDR4 3600 memory in a dual channel configuration. This will give us a good idea how close these laptop variants come to the desktop part with essentially the same name. I also have tested at two resolutions for this video. The primary configuration is 1080p running using Optimus, which is the default on most laptops today despite some progress towards SmartMux solutions. This means the discrete GPU signal is passed through the integrated GPU to the display. I've also tested at 1440p using an external display with a direct to discrete graphics connection for some of the comparison charts later in the video, which removes the small performance penalty from Optimus and also emulates what you'd get on a laptop with a 1440p display and a SmartMux solution like Advanced Optimus, for example. Usual laptop test notes apply here, not going to run through it all yet again in this video, so let's get straight into the benchmarks. In Metro Exodus, the RTX 3070 laptop GPU does a reasonable job of providing more performance than previous generation GPUs. This new variant at 115W TGP is over 40% faster than the RTX 2070 and a healthy 21% faster than the RTX 2070 Super, while also managing a 14% lead over the new RTX 3060 laptop GPU. However, it's not in the same league as the desktop GPU, which is 34% faster than this laptop variant. Meanwhile, the lower power 80W variant of the 3070 is actually a fair bit slower than the 115W model of the RTX 3060, which is going to present a problem for buyers comparing across different laptop designs. However, it holds its own against other lower power variants, 9% faster than the RTX 3060 and 23% ahead of the RTX 2070 Max-Q. In control, the RTX 3070 laptop GPU at 115W is the fastest mobile GPU we've tested in a reasonable form factor, 15% faster than the RTX 3060 and RTX 2070 Super, and 35% faster than the RTX 2070. However, it falls short of the desktop RTX 2070 Super and isn't close to the full RTX 3070, which is the only GPU to average well over 100 FPS in this title. In the lower power class, it's a tight battle. The RTX 3070 80W is slightly faster than the RTX 3060 115W, but ends up quite a bit ahead of other Max-Q designs. It's 24% faster than the RTX 2070 Super Max-Q, for example. In Borderlands 3, the desktop GPU ends up being a bit CPU limited at 1080p, so the gains relative to the laptop parts are more limited. The RTX 3070 at 115W pushes 12% in front of the RTX 3060 and 28% ahead of the RTX 2070, although cannot match the performance of a desktop RTX 2070 Super in a configuration that also benefits from a desktop CPU. Red Dead Redemption 2 saw some of the smallest gains moving from the RTX 3060 to the RTX 3070 in the 115W power class. The 3070 was just 7% faster. This allowed the desktop variant to produce 35% higher performance in this game. However, gains relative to previous generation parts are still impressive, with 36% higher performance relative to the RTX 2070. In the lower power class, again, this is a strong result for the RTX 3070, 15% faster than the RTX 2070 Super Max-Q at 90W, although it is just 9% ahead of the RTX 3060. Rainbow Six Siege running at 1080p gives us a good idea of what a game looks like when CPU limited, trying to push out as many frames as possible. Ultimately, there isn't much difference between the RTX 3070 and 3060 here, so people that enjoy playing on low quality settings in competitive games don't really have an incentive to buy the faster configuration as the CPU performance simply isn't there. The RTX 3070 on a desktop with a power unlimited 10600K absolutely destroys the laptop configurations with at least 65% better performance. In Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the RTX 3070 is a healthy 15% faster than the RTX 3060 within the same power level, although this performance difference shrinks to just single digits when comparing in the lower power class. While the RTX 3070 80W is about 10% faster than the RTX 2070 Super Max-Q, that's one of the less impressive gains we've seen so far, and in this game the desktop RTX 3070 is 30% faster or more. While the RTX 3070 doesn't deliver unplayable performance on laptops in Cyberpunk 2077, it is more like a 60fps experience here versus the 90fps you'll get with this GPU in a desktop. The 3070 is over 20% faster than the RTX 3060 in this game in both power classes, which is one of the larger margins we've seen so far, although ultimately it falls short of the RTX 2070 Super on desktops. In Watch Dogs Legion, the RTX 3070 performs very well relative to the RTX 3060 because not only is the GPU itself faster, but it also has a larger VRAM buffer, 8GB versus 6GB. In this particular title, more than 6GB of VRAM is used at 1080p ultra settings, which causes one of the largest performance discrepancies we've seen. At 115W, the RTX 3070 is 38% faster. 6GB is looking quite tight in some titles. Another example would be Cyberpunk with ray tracing enabled, so 8GB gives you that bit more breathing room for 1080p gaming today. In Horizon Zero Dawn, the RTX 3070 at 115 watts is just 10% faster than the RTX 3060. With this power limit, the laptop variant also falls considerably behind the RTX 2070 Super and the RTX 3070 desktop variants, so there is no doubting a desktop is superior for playing this sort of game. In Hitman 3's Dartmoor benchmark at 1080p, we are somewhat CPU limited again, so the RTX 3070 on laptops doesn't pull that far ahead of other variants, ending up just 5% faster than the RTX 3060 on our AMD systems and equal on our Intel systems. With the extra CPU power available to us on desktop platforms, our 10600K desktops are able to pull ahead. And the final game we are looking at in depth today is Dirt 5. This was one of the larger margins between the laptop and desktop variants at 47% comparing the desktop GPU to the 115 watt variant. But outside of that, laptop performance is as expected, coming in 13% ahead of the RTX 3060 in the higher power class and 6% ahead in the 80 watt range. The 3060 does pretty well here, all things considered, with the 115 watt model outperforming our 80 watt RTX 3070 configuration. I have a whole suite of performance comparisons to get through next, so let's get started. First up is a direct look at the RTX 3070 versus the RTX 3060 at the same 115 watt power level. So this might be a comparison between the same laptop model, just with a different GPU in its base spec and higher spec. The RTX 3070 ends up 15% faster on average at 1080p. When we remove CPU bottlenecks and the Optimus performance penalty by benchmarking at 1440p instead, this margin grows to 20% on average. While the RTX 3070 laptop is more of a 60fps GPU at 1440p compared to higher frame rates at 1080p, it's still quite playable even on ultra settings, so those after an RTX 3070 laptop may find that one with a 1440p display is a better choice. The margins are much narrower comparing the RTX 3070 to 3060 at 80 watts, indicating that the sweet spot for the RTX 3070 is its higher power configuration. On average, the 3070 here was just 10% faster, so in most instances the 3060 will be better value. On some occasions, you may find yourself with a choice between the RTX 3070 in a laptop at 115 watts versus the RTX 3060 at 80 watts. In these situations, the 3070 is going to be much faster, 27% faster on average, which depending on the price difference could swing much more in favor of the higher tier GPU. On the flip side, if you have an 80 watt RTX 3070 up against a 115 watt RTX 3060, on average these GPUs produce basically the same performance. The RTX 3070 with its larger GA104 die is clearly more efficient here, however depending on what laptops are available to you, you may be better off with the higher power RTX 3060 model. Overall, the delta between the 115 watt and 80 watt variants of the RTX 3070 is significant, 15% on average at 1080p, and that grows to 20% at 1440p as we remove more potential bottlenecks. This gives you a good indication of the range of possible performance you can get with the 3070 in laptops, and why looking at that power rating is so crucial. OEMs that have enough cooling to handle 115 or 125 watts are going to deliver a much better gaming experience. The RTX 3070 is faster than previous generation laptop GPUs. Comparing the 80 watt model to the RTX 2070 Super Max Q at 90 watts reveals the RTX 3070 to be 12% faster on average. Meanwhile, in a smaller selection of games at 115 watts, the RTX 3070 is a decent 30% faster on average than the RTX 2070, which is a good sign considering these two parts are a similar price. When comparing the RTX 3070 laptop GPU to its desktop counterpart, it's a bit of a bloodbath. At 1080p, the desktop variant is 35% faster on average than the 115 watt laptop variant. That margin does reduce to 30% on average at 1440p without Optimus, but it's undeniable that the desktop GPU is significantly faster and not really in the same performance class. It gets even worse for the 80 watt model. This GPU really isn't an RTX 3070, with the desktop card producing 53% higher frame rates on average at 1080p and 1440p. It's a hard task to convert a 220 watt GPU into an 80 watt GPU, and the results are here to see. While the laptop variant is technically more efficient and delivers better performance per watt, 80 watts is just too slim for an RTX 3070 to show what it's capable of. In reality, the RTX 3070 at 115 watts is more like an RTX 2070 Super desktop GPU, and even then the RTX 2070 Super is 10% faster on average. Hopefully that will give buyers a sense of where their RTX 3070 laptop sits in the overall graphics market. To wrap up this video, once again, we might be in for a long conclusion as there are two distinct ways to look at the RTX 3070 laptop GPU. One is purely from the perspective of the laptop market, and the other is looking at the gaming landscape as a whole, also factoring in desktop cards. Purely in the laptop market, the RTX 3070 laptop GPU is a decent enough, although not earth-shattering GPU upgrade for 2021 gaming notebooks. Compared to its Turing predecessors, the 3070 is up to 15% faster than the RTX 2070 Super and around 30% better than the RTX 2070 when comparing at the same power level. There is no doubt that the Ampere design on Samsung's 8nm process is more efficient, so laptops that have the same cooling capacity, let's say a refresh of the same design for this year, should be a respectable amount faster. The gains aren't as significant as we saw comparing Turing to Ampere on the desktop, but it's hard to eke out more performance when power constrained, and Ampere on the desktop did decide to use more power. The good news for laptop buyers is that Nvidia have made RTX 30 series laptops a bit cheaper than the Turing generation in this tier. The RTX 3070 is essentially replacing the RTX 2070, so these laptops should be cheaper than previous generation RTX 2070 Super systems, and that's basically what I've seen so far. Whether you look at it as being 15% faster than the 2070 Super for a lower price, or 30% faster than a 2070 at the same price, either way, that's a pretty good outcome and similar to the performance per dollar gains we saw with the RTX 3060 versus 2060 in laptops. There are some drawbacks though. The RTX 3070 laptop GPU does benefit more than usual from a high power configuration, so buyers should probably avoid 80W Max-Q configurations as the gains relative to the RTX 3060 are small. In general, the RTX 3070 is also not as good value as the RTX 3060. In the Aorus 15G, for example, the 3070 configuration is 20% more expensive, and I'd expect at best 10 to 15% better performance. That's not unusual as you move up the product stack, but it's something to keep in mind. Also important to look out for are those power configurations. I'm very thankful Nvidia are forcing OEMs to make this information public because there is the possibility for an RTX 3070 low power config to perform below that of an RTX 3060 in a higher power config. This could swing the value proposition further in favor of the 3060 if you were comparing a 115W 3060 laptop to an 80W 3070 laptop. The naming scheme still isn't great here, and I think Nvidia should make it much clearer what model you're getting. While I think the RTX 3070 laptop GPU is quite decent overall in its own little laptop bubble, it's also hard to ignore the elephant in the room. This GPU does not provide RTX 3070 desktop-like performance. In fact, it's not even close. Even at 115 watts, the desktop variant is 30% faster, and honestly, the difference between a low-power RTX 3070 laptop GPU and the full desktop card is embarrassing. Two products with a larger than 50% performance delta simply should not have a name that's so similar. My main concern here is a laptop buyer that's seen all the hype around Nvidia's GeForce RTX 3070 in desktop systems since the card launched last year, and is looking at buying a laptop expecting that level of performance. The RTX 3070 is a bit of a beast, but with over 200 watts of power consumption, it just can't be put into a reasonably sized laptop. Buying an $1,800 laptop only to find out that the RTX 3070 you just bought is actually slower than an RTX 2070 Super desktop GPU, or worse for lower power models, is going to sting badly. Does this mean laptops are stupid and you should only buy a desktop? Not at all. I just wish Nvidia were more realistic about what a laptop can achieve and named their products appropriately. If this RTX 3070 laptop GPU is more like an RTX 3060 in performance, then so be it. That's what it should be called. It's better for consumers to know clearly what they are getting and not be potentially misled into buying a product that doesn't deliver what they wanted or expected. Ultimately here, our recommendation for gaming laptops is the same that it's always been. Buying a gaming desktop is going to be faster and or cheaper for a given level of performance in almost all instances. But laptops are still a good product if you require something portable, and Nvidia are pushing laptop performance further ahead with the RTX 3070 laptop GPU in these sorts of portable products. You just need to make sure you are genuinely moving your laptop from place to place, because if it's just sitting on your desk hooked up to a monitor all the time, what we've seen again today is a laptop is no match for a true desktop class product. Anyway, that's it for our look at the RTX 3070 laptop GPU and a bit of a comparison to the desktop parts. We do know that previously with our 3060 coverage, you guys wanted us to add in the desktop GPU for this video. So I've done that here with the RTX 3070, and hopefully you've got all the information that you need to make an informed decision, whether that's buying a laptop or buying a desktop. You've got all the information now to make a pretty solid purchasing choice, although I guess it is a bit hard to buy products at the moment given a lot of these 3070 discrete GPUs are out of stock. The laptops are a little bit hard to find as well. So yeah, good luck out there in the market at the moment. But I guess if you're coming to this video in a couple of months, hopefully everything has been resolved. Anyway, if you're interested in supporting our laptop coverage, you can do that via our Patreon or Floatplane accounts. Links are in the description below. We will be back very shortly, probably next week, to take a look at AMD versus Intel performance with the same GPU for both productivity and gaming. So that should be pretty interesting. And yeah, that's it. I'll catch you in the next one.